Welcome to the Listen to This Bull Live Breaking Bull segment. Breaking Bull is whenever there's something that is big, new, and exciting or devastating that needs to be talked about. We do the Breaking Bull segments. My name is Matt Mulholland. It might have been a while since you've seen me on one of these live episodes, but here we are, and there's got to be a lot more. We've got a lot going on in California. I've got Vince Perri and Cameron Mooney in the background waiting to come onto the show. They're sitting in California right now drinking shots because of the stuff that they just saw. We've got a lot of things to go over, but without further ado, let me pull on my good friend Vince and Cameron. Hey, guys.
How's it going?
What's going on?
How we doing? All right. So you guys are in California because there's been these devastating wildfires. And if the audience has been sticking their face in the sand or head in the sand or whatever the euphemism is for the last few days, then they don't know. But California is on fire, and so is Los Angeles, and a lot of money is being spent on this. There is more damage being created now than any other event in history from a dollars to dollar perspective. So you guys got to go see some of it today. Tell me what you saw.
Cameron, I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, so I'm from Southern California. I live in Ventura County, just outside of LA County. And Matt, you're right. It is by far, I think, the worst event that I've ever witnessed. And I've been here for a lot of wildfires. I've lived here my whole life. So I put out a video yesterday just saying if, a lot of times events can be sensationalized, can be overblown, especially us as adjusters. We'll read about a storm, so I'm like, it's not that bad. They're making it seem bigger. Like this one could not be overblown. Kind of wild. And especially I took Vince to a spot today where you could look over kind of all of LA County and see all the different fires at the same time. It's about 5 different separate wildfires that you can see, and we saw other ones literally pop up
while we were there.
So it's pretty insane to be from here and see it all happening. We went to the site of the Camarillo wildfires just a couple months ago. November 6th is when that one hit. Showed it, Vince, what that neighborhood looks like and what it looks like just a couple months past. It looks devastated still. We weren't able to get all that close to the Palisades fire, but you're seeing it from everywhere essentially right now.
And to see a whole neighborhood just like totally just gone. It's a little bit, obviously, I'm from Florida, so I'm used to hurricanes and stuff. And Mexico Beach rings a bell from hurricane, was that Irma? I think it was. Was that Irma,
Yeah.
Mexico Beach?
Yeah.
Or is that, right?
And when you just see it, it's just
completely...
Michael, wasn't it?
No, what was that?
No.
It was Michael.
Michael.
Where just Mexico Beach is completely flattened. That's kind of what it reminded me of when we were at this neighborhood where it's just all wiped out, just totally gone. It's just pretty wild.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen tornado destruction in Nashville where houses are just completely decimated, but it's in a small, thin track. And it might be long, it might be wide, but ultimately it's still a small amount. When you get into these wildfires, they can spread like crazy. Then you have the looting, and the burglaries, and the people setting fires, the arsons that are out there making it even worse. And that's an interesting aspect to approach this when you have insurance claims involved. If it's a arson situation, for the policyholder's sake, that's still a covered loss, but they might have to prove that they themselves were not the arson. So that might be interesting to see how that comes down the line.
It was one of our discussions that we were having today, actually.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Have you seen any of that? Did you happen to witness any looting going on yourselves?
I had to keep Vince from getting too wild out there a couple times today, but bringing a little too much Florida to California, as I told him.
Matt and I have hung out before. He knows.
Vince is like, when in Rome. Yeah, that's what everybody else is doing. I'm supposed to do it too.
No, we didn't see any of that though, but like honestly it caught me by surprise. I mean, you know how I think, Matt. I'm Mr. like kumbaya, everybody's a good person and all this stuff, and I'm just like, why would anybody do that? And Cameron just looked at me just like, dude, it happens. This is what happens. And I'm just like, because literally we're there on this mountaintop and we're overlooking the city of LA, and like he said, you see all these different smoke, and then boom, we're like literally talking, and he's like, wait, that wasn't there. And it's probably somebody looting or starting a fire or something like that. And out here, it just catches, and then it spreads. But yeah, I didn't know that was a thing. And then my question was, is it covered? Because if arson isn't covered, like, do they take that back to that and then say it's But then if it becomes a wildfire, is that covered? But then does it have to be started by the insured, or does it matter? We kind of got lost in the conversation, so I don't know.
So as far as I understand,
What do you
arson
think, Matt?
is vandalism in itself. So as long as vandalism is covered by the policy, you should be fine. Fire as a named peril is definitely covered. It doesn't necessarily state any reason that the fire started as an issue for the named peril. I think that you're going to have coverage for fire one way or the other, unless the policyholder started the fire and there's insurance part involved. So, or was party to it. Maybe they called a buddy and had them go set
But
a
I had
fire.
also heard a couple years ago that wildfire exclusions were starting to pop up. Cameron said that he hasn't really seen anything like that, but I had heard that. I don't know if that's true. That was like a couple years ago.
I haven't seen any specific exclusions, though, like other policies writing out certain named perils and supplementary insurance popping up to cover it. That's what's happening out here. So carriers are coming back into the state, but a lot of them are saying, I'm not going to include wildfire. California Fair Plan will take care of you.
It's just like Citizens Insurance and wind in Florida or TDI in Texas.
Yeah.
It's supplemental insurance that picks up just that one peril. So a lot of people are dealing with this. They're dealing with the California Fair Plan, and it's expensive. It's just like citizen insurance. It's very expensive to have that additional coverage, and there's not nearly as much coverage involved in there. And they might have extremely high deductibles. And then you're dealing with government agencies when you're dealing with the carriers, which you start to wonder, would dealing with a government agency be better than dealing with a private insurance carrier? It's a fun question to answer. It almost feels political.
I can answer it for you.
Next too.
I can answer it for you. Say it's not easier. I've done enough of it to know that. I mean, even once you, as frustrating as it can be, negotiating or helping someone negotiate with their insurance company, right? And especially for one versus the other, it can be way worse. How much more frustrating it is once you get to forced placed insurance, and then once you get to a fair plan or a state placed insurance. It's like when you get further removed from an actual first party typical property insurance contract, and it gets more difficult as you're in that negotiation process. So that's the other thing I've already seen a good handful of is people have called me to take a look at their policy and just, hey, what are you seeing here? Is several of the phone calls have been forced placed just because, not because people weren't trying to get insurance. They were trying to, couldn't find a carrier because they got dropped and nobody wanted to write for wildfire. And so when their 30 days were up, their mortgage got a forced place policy. And that's the only thing it was covering, but it only covers up to the limit of the mortgage that they have on it. And it doesn't cover your contents or your ALE. So people are really suffering when it comes to that.
They're not doing well. And then if you want to get involved as a public adjuster, you have to get the mortgage to sign off on it, which is not easy either. I've never had a good time getting that done anyway. We've got a question from the audience here. From Elijah Tucker. Have you all seen public adjuster exclusions on any of the policies you've reviewed?
I've never seen one. I've only heard about them. I haven't actually even heard about them in California, but I haven't seen one anywhere.
That's just with that one carrier, right? I can't remember the name of it. Matt, you got to remember. What's the name? Not the public adjuster exclusion, but the anti-public adjuster endorsement.
Yeah, I don't remember the name either.
Are you serious? It's I forgot the name of the carrier, but yeah, it's on of that one particular carrier.
I've seen it on some commercial policies. I've seen it on some surplus lines, but I haven't seen it on.
You could act as a loss consultant, though. I mean,
well, I mean, you're not going to get your fees paid. There's a lot of policies that state that they won't pay the fees of professionals that are attorneys and public adjusters, but it will pay the fees of professionals that are otherwise, like engineers and things. So it might have an exclusion for paying the fees, but I haven't seen any. I was curious to see if the FAIR plan might have that kind of an exclusion, but it would be crazy if a government entity had that exclusion in there.
I can't see that happening. That would be brutal. No. Again, I can't remember the name, but like the way you got to take that. I mean, it has to. If the insured, if it's a large loss in particular, you're going to have to get an attorney involved, and you basically act as a loss consultant on it. Is how that usually goes.
Dylan Waldrop just posted that he had one with Chubb on a commercial property that had an anti-PA endorsement. Chubb.
I don't think it was Chubb though.
Wow.
I don't think it's Chubb. Maybe that one in particular, but I'm pretty sure Chubb wouldn't. I mean, Chubb is usually pretty easy to work with.
I've never seen Chubb have one.
Google it. I'll Google it. I'll find out. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
there, and it's on every single one of the same exact insurance company. I just got to find out.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It would be very, very hard for them to enforce. It's there, but if you were to try to enforce that, complaint to Department of Insurance, or potentially getting an attorney involved to try to challenge that as being constitutional or something, is somewhere they probably don't want to go. I think it just tries. It's one of those things they attempt. Or a policy says you can't hire a public adjuster.
Yeah, it's enough of a barrier to keep some public adjusters off of a claim, though. You know, if I saw one, I would think twice about, like, I don't know if that's a fight I want to have. I don't know if I want to go through that.
I know a lot of public adjusters that want that fight, though. I mean, there's definitely some that want to take it on and see if they can be the big hero for all the PAs.
Yeah,
right.
Hope they are.
You can, but you're better off going to litigation on.
Yeah, no, I agree. All right, so these wildfires, they're coming at a time when a lot of people have lost their coverages and they're getting picked up by the FAIR Plan. But as you said, the coverage will only extend. It'll cap out at a lower rate, and if it's forced placed, it'll cap out at the mortgage amount. So if they owe only half of their mortgage left, then they're only getting half of that coverage potential. Do you think these people need public adjusters?
I would say most of the time, yes. Especially for large, complex losses. So, Matt, you and I haven't talked about tugboat before, but we're generally helping people advocate for themselves when it comes to tugboat. We're just a service that helps provide some guidance. People talk to their own insurance companies. We don't do it on their behalf. We have a public adjusting firm that Tugboat owns called Waypoint Adjusting, so I still practice. And there are plenty of times where I'm telling people, I don't think you need a public adjuster. Claim's too small. It's not complex enough, whatever it might be. These are all such large ones, complex, and people have asked me, well, it's total loss. I'm a little bit worried about it being underinsured, which is a legitimate concern. And if I look at a policy and it's vastly underinsured and it's so clear that their carrier is going to pay out quickly, then I would tell them the same thing. But even in the Camarillo wildfires, ones that we're working on, there are people that are having us represent them just simply because they didn't want to handle it themselves. And we had told them, hey, you're probably underinsured. If you want us to work on it for you, we still will. And people did, right? Some people make that decision still. Even on those ones, we saw them. I mean, the claims are 2 months old. They've paid about 70% of coverage A, and they're putting up a fight to pay the rest of it, and it's underinsured. So even when it's underinsured, there is a good chance that if you don't have the tools to negotiate, to advocate, to make yourself whole, you're not going to get to that limit. So if the goal is to get everything that you're owed out of your policy that you've been paying for, even if technically you might be underinsured, you might still need a public adjuster. So I would say, no, not everybody needs a public adjuster, but these claims are large, expensive, complex homes, big policies on a lot of them. So even some that are force placed, I talked to one yesterday, they have enough coverage for the rebuild. They just don't have contents or ALE. So if they want to get that full limit on their rebuild, then yeah. And even on the force placed ones, I've seen one where they were really healthily insured because they owed most of their mortgage still. Mm-hmm. And we know that the price that you rebuild your home for and the mortgage had enough insurance to cover the whole remaining mortgage. And so I think there was like about $2 million in coverage. When I looked at it, the rebuild cost was probably somewhere closer in the $1.2 million for that house. So all that to say, some of them have plenty of room, plenty of coverage there on at least the structure.
Matt, as long as the insurance company is sending somebody over to put an estimate together, you can never just say this is a total loss. I would even go so far, even if the house is off the slab, as long as they're sending somebody to put a line itemized estimate together, it may or may not hit policy limits. And as long as it's under policy limits, then it's always going to be some kind of negotiation, some kind of argument, and your estimate versus my estimate. But unless they're going over there and just cutting a check for a total loss, then I get it.
Yeah.
Why hire a public adjuster? But if they're
so do you think that they should let the carrier give first offer first?
If someone wants to, we'll tell people if you want to start off your claim on your own, get your first offer. But we're realistic about it. Like, these are the types of issues you might see if you start with a public adjuster start with a public adjuster, that first offer might be significantly lower. You may be kind of settling in to some things and agreeing to things early on that your public adjuster is going to have to fight for later that you never should have been agreed to earlier. So, I mean, I always tell people, even if they're advocating for themselves, so much easier to avoid a mistake than to overcome one. And so,
Yeah, that's true.
you can avoid a lot of mistakes by having a public adjuster early, but you don't have to necessarily. There's plenty of room for public adjusters to work on the supplement side of these claims as well.
And the personal property side as well.
Yeah.
The personal properties, that's rough. Are we allowed to curse?
I think you're
Did you say
encouraged.
we love to curse? Is that what you just said?
Said, are we allowed to curse?
Oh, fuck yeah.
Okay. Anyway, now I don't want
This
to.
is the
But
bullshit
yeah,
show, man.
it's dude, personal property, it's fucking complicated, man. Like that shit is rough. I've learned honestly just recently over the last 6 months, a year, working some more large loss, working with buyers. Like personal property, if there's any way, if somebody wants to say anything about public adjusters not being worth it or whatever, on the personal property side, after a fire loss, get out of here. Because you know what the insurance carrier does? They put their estimate together, they take their photos, and then they hand you a sheet and say, here, fill this out. This is going to be your personal property claim. And then you're going to write up a bunch of stuff. You have no photo documentation. You submit it. They're going to comb through it like crazy, and they're not going to pay you anything for it. As opposed to getting somebody out there who is an expert and knows what they're doing, can photograph everything and put together a nice line, itemized, detailed contents estimate to back it up with a photo per line item. That's the way you do it. We know how to do that.
And don't
right?
forget, there's removal costs, there's taxes that need to be added into that, there's installation, all that kind of stuff that most people don't even think about or consider. So there's all that stuff to go along with that. Even if it's ACV only, you still have to start with the RCV cost and all that comes with that. So even if there's a pair of
100%.
jeans, installation into your club.
I'll share a quick story. Yeah, I'll share a quick story. There was I think it was a policyholder from the Camarillo wildfires. Anyways, their adjuster from their carrier, they had told their adjuster, hey, we're concerned about the prices that you have for these items. And so, for instance, they had a couch that was a $5,000 couch. The adjuster had listed the RCV at $2,000. And their adjuster, when they brought that concern to them, literally said, well, it's RCV, so why don't you go purchase the couch for the value that you think the replacement cost should be, and then we'll look at the receipt and then address the replacement cost value of it. As if they were going to find the appropriate RCV value only after you went and purchased the items. And so this was a fire loss, and they were told that across their entire contents estimate. And so they had priced all the furniture from, I don't know, it was Ashley Furniture and Home Depot. And this is a high-end house. And so they were, they were putting a spot really quickly on that one.
I can tell you this, if you think that you're going to hit the policy limits on personal property, it's a good idea to undervalue each individual item. You don't want to be accused of fraud in some way, and it's an easy thing that they do, especially on fire losses, where if you have something, you have a pair of jeans you're saying are super designer jeans, or all your jeans are designer jeans, unless you're a celebrity, it's unlikely that that's true, and they're going to think very skeptically of you. So if you're going to hit the policy limits, maybe just take it easy on the value of each individual thing. You're going to hit it anyway. You don't need to worry about it too much.
Mm-hmm.
So I do want to talk a little bit about the houses that aren't on fire. We've got claims related to ash, soot, smoke, heat damage, even if there wasn't direct fire. I think those probably need public adjusters more than the fire ones do. How do you feel about that?
You also have to consider all of the, I'm going to use the wrong terms here, but like all the carcinogens and chemicals and everything that come about from that fire to anybody in the neighborhood. Even if you're within miles of it, it could have an effect on your AC ducts, which could have an effect on your clothing if you have carpet, and you might not even be close to the fire, but you were sort of around it, and that stuff travels. It's one thing that we're actually looking into at our company, Matt, is even if we don't sign up the fire, or we do sign up the fire, but to go to the surrounding houses, surrounding neighborhoods even, and potentially offering some kind of test where you can test to see if any of that stuff, because that's a claim as well. So yeah, I think it's going to be a huge thing if people go at it with that angle. I think those have to be considered. I don't know if you've ever dealt with something like
there's a whole industry out here in Southern California for smoke losses. It's like the hail industry, and anywhere else. There are PA firms that make most of their money off of those. They sign them at really high percentages too. But yeah, Matt, to your point, those claims in their own way can be more complex and more disputed on every little thing than a fire loss. On a fire loss, it's clear. So even if someone needs a PA to get the full value of your claim, you know what you're fighting over. We're fighting over the value of this house because it's burnt to the ground, right? We're fighting over what codes need to be implemented. You're not fighting over whether or not smoke, soot, and ash particulate is considered damage and whether or not that can be properly cleaned out of certain materials. Those disputes are exhausting for a homeowner, for a public adjuster to have. You really have to grind it out. We're helping a lot of people from the Camarillo wildfires that did only have smoke damage. But imagine the smoke damage when you're the only house standing on a block from every other house that burned down. It's one thing to be a few blocks away. Those houses are still smoke affected, but we're having huge battles on whether or not interior painting is even justified on houses that were next door, a few feet away from the fire. And all they're approving is out the gate is a simple cleaning. All we have to do is vacuum and wipe down the walls, and that's going to be enough. Maybe we'll replace the attic insulation. We don't want to look at the AC. We're talking heat damage to a roof where several shingles are melted. And so we're talking about, well, what about all the shingles around it? They may not be melted, but how much heat are they supposed to take on? You look it up. Oh, they're supposed to take on about 120 to 150 degrees is what they're rated for. Well, how hot do you think they got during this fire if it melted all the ones around it right here?
There's all kinds of shit that goes along with that. Heat, especially if it gets above 400 degrees, 450 degrees Fahrenheit will actually affect galvanization on metals. So your fasteners, your gang plates, whatever you want to call them, they can all be affected. They can start to rust down the road just because the galvanized coating has been affected. And anytime you hit that kind of a temperature range, you're also expanding that metal so much that by the time it shrinks back down, if it's in wood, it has opened that wood up to where now it's loose. A lot of those issues are, especially with truss systems. Are there a lot of truss systems in California, or is it stick built?
There's both. Yeah, so there's plenty. You're on the same block. It just depends on the builder, but yeah, there's plenty of truss systems out here.
Yeah, those truss systems, they're commonly referred to as fireman killers because the gang nails, the gang plates, they expand so rapidly in comparison to the wood that when they go back, it's loose, and now the truss can just fall apart. So firemen walking on top of the roof fall in, and they call them fireman killers for that reason. It's dangerous, but now you have an issue where the roof may not be able to support the weight any longer, or the weight of rain down the road or something along those lines. It definitely can affect. So the temperature at which these attics are getting matters quite a bit. Now, you're probably not going to hit 450 unless the house is directly on fire, but the exterior components of that will. And if you're talking about fastener heads, nail heads, especially under a shingle, they're going to rust really rapidly. And now the shingles aren't going to be secured to the roof. You might start having slide out coming off. There's all kinds of issues that come with high heat. Proving that is the hard part. So getting the right engineer that can talk about these things is really the important thing to do so that you can have some kind of an expert making these statements instead of you. You need someone that can evaluate whether or not those temperatures were reached, because no one's got a thermometer on the roof right now.
No, and no one has a thermometer. And we've had conversations with adjusters just trying to open up the conversation about dioxins, about the toxins that, because again, this isn't just a brush fire. When it was the house next to you and their garage and all the chemicals that were in it. I mean, the house that we walked through today was 2 cars, all the fuels that were in there, everything that burned right across from a house that is still standing. And it's like, okay, so what type of smoke engulfed this house that was over here? It wasn't just brush that engulfed it. And to get the dioxins test is really expensive, right? And there's only a few labs that do it. And so trying to be able to have the conversation like, hey, can we agree that the smoke that affected this house was more toxic, was more carcinogenic than just, the tree burning down or someone having a campfire in their backyard? I've had adjusters say things like that. It's like, well, if they had a campfire in the back, you might get some smoke over here as well. It's like, that's not what this was. No, it wasn't even close.
Well, we're not talking about the chemicals that are built into houses at all being burned. I don't know. Do you guys get a lot of poison ivy in California?
A lot.
Yeah, that can definitely cause issues with your lungs if it's smoke that's coming from that. I don't know if that gets residual effect on walls. I've been wondering that since people started doing smoke claims for a long time. things along those
actually,
lines.
I haven't thought about that
I
one.
never thought
Yeah.
about
I'll write
that.
down my next report and
Yeah,
see what
that's great.
happens.
Thanks, man.
There you go. Let's see
Everyone
what
feels
happens.
itchy in this home.
That's awesome.
My lungs are itchy. I can't get it out. Very good.
Complex claims, that's for sure.
So there's a lot of exclusions for different kinds of pollutants and things that are coming into policies now. And they might try to use those exclusions to say that the ash, soot, and smoke damages and the carcinogens and all that fall under silica and all these other small things that they're claiming are part of pollution. Do you have any good advice on that?
Well, it's not the original cause of loss.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's not, though, I mean, they can write it. I mean, those exclusions will have language in it, like regardless of the original cause of loss, regardless of what caused it. Same thing with asbestos exclusions and things like that. I haven't come up against it yet, but my typical advice to someone having that conversation with an adjuster is to get really detailed about it. Like, look at the language, the words that are used in that exclusions or in that exclusion, right? If it has a chemicals or toxic substances exclusion, and then look at what it seems to you. I mean, if you want to get really creative, have an attorney do a search for you on what has this been interpreted as in case law before? How has this been used? What types of things? This is what one of the conversations that we're having on a claim we're consulting on that has to do with water that was running under the ground. And what is this exclusion really talking about when it's talking about groundwater and surface water and exerting pressure on a building? Because in this one claim, they used that to exclude rain that came through the roof because they said it was water that exerted pressure on the building and it didn't have the word underground on it. And so you looking at what are these exclusions really talking about? What are they trying to refer to? Is this really supposed to include smoke coming from another building and the particulate coming from it? Or are we talking about asbestos? Are we talking about removal of silica, removal of toxic chemicals that spilled on site and things like that? And so I think understanding what the purpose of an exclusion is important, and digging into the words that are actually used there and what you're actually talking about. Because you can, especially early on in these exclusions, they'll be, until they add all the words, you know how in the seepage exclusion, they just add every word that they can imagine that has to do with water leaking, water that leaks or seeps or drips,
every type of
or
potential
animals.
life form that could possibly exist and any kind of damage that might occur from that. Yeah,
exactly. So until they do that, you can usually find your way through it.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, though, especially with groundwater and different things like that. Every state is slightly different on how they've interpreted those things. So going to an attorney to find out what that state has interpreted as is very, very important. I think it's a very good a good thing to point out. And if you are looking at the pollution exclusions and asbestos and all that kind of stuff, keep in mind that a lot of the policies out there still have that excluded only under liability. So verify that it's under the property side before you even try to fight that. And if it is on the property side, and it is in a lot of policies these days, but it's a new thing that's only really started existing in the last 2 years. So if it's an older policy,
It's
more
true.
than 2 years old, probably under liability only.
Yeah.
So, all right. I've got a question from the audience. This is from TJ McCormick, the world's greatest roofer himself, good friend of mine. Do you think that the winds that are coming this next week are going to push this hundreds of miles?
No, I don't think the fires ever really get pushed hundreds of miles. It's weird. This isn't to say that fires are getting overblown, because they're hitting such populated areas. They really are decimating large areas. But hundreds of miles, I wouldn't say. Like, usually it dies down from that. But it means the wind's coming next week. I told Vince this earlier today. I said these fires are still really big. If they can't get them under control in the next 5 days, they could keep moving. But it only has to move 10 miles until it's in the next really populated area, right? The Pacific Palisades fire, if you get really strong onshore winds that are pushing back over the hills, now you're right into the San Fernando Valley, back into the Hollywood Hills area, back into almost where we are right now. It just comes the other way over the mountain. And that's not very far. So maybe not hundreds of miles, but I do think that there is a pretty big risk that those winds cause these winds to push if they can't get them out. And even if they don't, Matt, you mentioned arson at the beginning of this. I've talked to Vince about it earlier. There's something in the air that's going on right now, and what's going on is that fires are popping up all over the place, constantly having to get put out. So
It turns out that the smoke that is out there is actually affecting people's brains and making them want to steal and burn things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's probably the argument that they'll make when they go to court and they finally get caught.
Yeah.
Right.
They'll probably get away with it too.
They'll probably get away with it here. That's for sure.
Yeah, they just might. They just might. All right. So if you're a public adjuster out of the state of California,
Mhm.
do you think that there's enough work because of this that they ought to get a license in California and come work in California?
I'll take this one. I think so. I think so. I think it's worth it. But you have to make sure that you come with a plan. I mean, you can't just come here and just apply for a temporary license and hope for the best. Like, you have to do your homework first. I think you start definitely with understanding the policy a little bit more. So connecting with somebody like Cameron, even connecting with somebody like me or somebody on my team. I know a lot of people that can help with that, so that you don't come over here and make any bonehead decisions. I also think that in regards to just the marketing aspect, you have to just really think about the strategy that you're going to take. Reach out to as many people before you even come here, see who you can connect with. Obviously, you want to get with some contractors and stuff like that. And if you're going to do it digitally, just make sure that you have all that ready to go and you actually know what you're doing. Because if not, I've traveled for a disaster before without any kind of plan, and it is a disaster and nothing really good happens. You don't really end up signing much of anything, and you end up going back home just with a complete waste of time. But yeah, I think it's worth it.
Yeah, I think it is going to depend on what type of firm you're with, what type of public adjuster you are. Are you a solo entrepreneur, public adjuster, doing it all on your own? Are you with a team? What kind of resources do you have? And even when I was an independent adjuster, the theme was have your claims before you go.
Right.
You need
Exactly.
have the work before you go out there. Right now, there's so many different areas of SoCal that are hit right now. Even like Altadena isn't close to Pacific Palisades, right? And Pacific Palisades isn't close to Silmar. And so there's these different areas that are hit really hard. I would start by calling your own network and going through and seeing if you can get interest in some jobs. Because the truth is, if you can get a couple total loss fires that are interested in representation, then it's worth the work, most likely. It's worth the travel, but you have to be willing. You're going to come out here several times. Someone from your team is. You're going to be on inspections. You're going to have to be willing to put up the costs to be able to do that. And a large job like this can be worth it. But I wouldn't come out here, spend a bunch of money, put a marketing plan together, boots on the ground. There's no doors to knock on. Right? They're all staying in hotels and temporary houses. What I would do, so my recommendation was, if you don't have a network that's going to pass you work already, is to reach out to some of the public adjusters out here and say, hey, do you need any help? Because there are some really well-established firms out here. There are firms that have been here for decades. There's the big names, the Greenspans. I used to work for Metropolitan Adjustment Bureau. Shout out to Glenn and their team there. Great public adjusting firm that's been here for decades and really well-established, big teams. And I would reach out to some of those, and then even some of the smaller ones. Reach out to us if you wanted to, and just be like, hey, we're interested in what type of collaboration can we do on these? Because I don't even know how busy we're going to be from this. I don't know yet, right? I'm getting a ton of phone calls, but I'm not signing work at this moment. Right? I'm answering questions, letting things kind of cool down, let people think through it. Let me look at your policy. Let's think about this beforehand. So you don't know if it's going to be 10 jobs or 20 jobs or 100 jobs or more yet for firms that are local like ours out here. So I would say, if you don't have your own network and pipeline to get that work, reach out to some local people. Leland Kuntz, I'll shout him out. He posted last week that he said, if you want work out here in California, hit me up and we'll see if there's a way that we can collaborate on it. And I think that would be the best way for most to get their foot in the door out here. And the answer is there's plenty of work. It would be selfish of me to say that there's not. Like, we drove through one area today, but like there's so many houses.
I'd also be sure to know and get your head around the idea of a fire loss as well, which in of itself is extremely complex, very difficult to work. It's a whole other animal. Forget being in California. It's just the fire loss itself. It's a lot of responsibility, not only on the complexity and the size of the loss, but you're also dealing with a client who's literally just lost everything. And now they're relying on you to put them back to where they need to be. And it's a lot of pressure that a newbie public adjuster, no offense to you guys, but it's tough. I would prefer that if somebody just starting out really wants to get over here, is definitely to
Get a
team up
mentor. Yeah.
team up with a public adjuster and at least get your feet wet to figure stuff out, because it is a lot of responsibility, and if you don't handle it right, it's just going to make all of us, look bad.
It'll be consequential for you too. There'll be liability concerns if you don't know what you're doing. I'm sure yeah. So if you're someone that primarily works hail in Colorado or something like that, which is great, like there's great adjusters that haven't touched a total loss fire before because it's just not that common in a certain area, then I would say definitely you're going to want to connect with someone with some experience on it because there's so much at stake for the policyholder.
I'm not a big fan of the type of person that, fakes it till they make it on claims. You need to learn before you take something on. They are relying on you as their expert to do what's right for them. You have a fiduciary responsibility to the policyholder to do what's right for them. If you don't know what you're doing, don't fake it. It's not okay to do that. It's not okay. So get someone to help you out. Hold your hand. Split a deal with another PA if you have to. It doesn't matter. Learn on the job if you need to, but you need to have someone there with experience that is working with you.
Which is, that's what I want to say too, is I'm with you on the fake it till you make it, but at the same time, you're also going to learn a lot through the experience. So just don't do it by yourself. Definitely team up with another PA so they can sort of guide the way. Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we call this quits, because I don't want this to be too long of a segment, is there anything that I haven't mentioned that you think people should be aware of if they wanted to come and do fire claims in California or smoke claims?
Is there anything that people should be aware of?
You can start that one.
If they want to start doing fire claims out in California. I mean, I think we just covered it. Yeah, I think we just covered it. I think on in regards to just understanding the claims process in California, that's one. Another thing is understanding how to actually work fire claims and the difference between all of that. That's number two. In regards to having some kind of marketing strategy before heading out here, like how are you going to get your claims? Are you going to go to a local networking group? Are you going to team up with another public adjuster? Or are you going to go all in on digital marketing with social media and shift your website and have a new landing page and promote that? And then as far as an operations is concerned, I would say just make sure that you've got some backing in regards to a good admin. Potentially some good people behind you to make sure that your claims are handled. You know what this is a lot like, Matt? This is like a hurricane.
It is.
It's really funny. I mean, not funny, but that's what I told Cameron as soon as we saw each other, as soon as he came to pick me up at the hotel. I'm like, this is like a hurricane. Like, that feeling, Matt, where there's just like, it's just like, kind of like
everywhere,
crazy. And it's everywhere. And his phone has not fucking stopped ringing. And it's just like, oh my God, there's just so much. That's kind of what it feels like out here. And I know you've been through it and I've been through it and I've been through it, unfortunately, where the hurricane comes and like all of your processes and operations explode because there's just so much going on. So make sure that you've got all that stuff set, prepared, ready to go. And then,
I would say, one note that I would give to people is that if you weren't prepared for an event like this to happen for within your business already, which means like either you're here local and you have a network and you have a way of supporting this work here, or you've been waiting for it from another state and you prepared some way, or you have a firm big enough to support it from another state. Don't see it. It's not your opportunity to make a good amount of money from a storm. It's an opportunity for you to get some experience, right? So see it as the opportunity to learn.
Yeah.
Rather than
if you're not prepared, you're going to come out and you're going to spend too much money getting prepared 100%. Last minute, and you're going to run out of money and be done.
Exactly.
That's a very good way to look at it. So I really appreciate your time, guys. Have some dinner, have a shot on me, and not on me. I'm not paying for your shot. I didn't mean to say it like that. If you come to Tennessee and come to my bar at the BEI headquarters, I'll buy you all the drinks you want. You ready to go?
I would like to always encourage any of the public adjusters out there watching your show, Matt, to reach out to me, like if they have any questions, any concerns, or they're just wondering like what it's like. By the way, did you know that I'm not here for this? I'm not in California for this.
I had a feeling you were doing the kind of thing that I usually do. You're out there for content and getting exposure and things along those lines.
No, I swear to you. No. Listen to this. No, me and my wife had a 3-day meditation workshop that we were out here to do. And then on the day we were leaving on Wednesday, my wife goes, I don't know if we're going to go to this thing because like apparently LA's on fire. And I'm like, all right. So we kept checking the flight to see what was going on, kept checking the flight. 5 minutes after we board the plane, we're sitting down, our event canceled. I'm here for that. I'm not here for this. But hey,
This
I'm
is
here
a
now.
meditation for you. You don't feel relaxed and
It
calm
is.
suddenly?
It is. I feel right at home, I guess.
Right at
Yes.
home.
Yes. Feel ready
Your
to rock
wife
and
is doing
roll.
great. Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah,
that's
I thought
crazy,
that was
man.
funny. Yeah, that's the universe telling you something. I'll be back.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cameron and I are gonna work some claims, and we're gonna rock and roll, help some
You'll need
policyholders.
the meditation more by the end of this.
I'll say one more thing, Matt. I know that you've dealt with a lot of roof claims and engineering documentation and hail and all this stuff, and I've done a lot of those claims. But in my opinion, there's nothing more rewarding than as a public adjuster working a fire loss. Because for me, as a public adjuster, it's everything that I became a public adjuster for. And what I mean by that, it's catastrophic. They don't know what to do. They need us because the insurance company, I'm telling you, is going, as long as they're writing a detailed estimate, it's not gonna be a total loss, and that's obviously what they need in a lot of these occasions. The personal property part of it, it's impossible to do without somebody that actually knows what they're doing. No offense to the roofers or roof claims and the hail hits, but sometimes you're up on a roof and you're like, is that a hail hit? Is that not a hail hit? Is that wind damage? Is that not? When was the date of loss? I don't know. Let's look at this app to find out the date. Like all that, we don't do that here. We literally are boots on the ground, help the homeowner, making sure that they get what they actually deserve, with our intention of getting them really put back on their feet. And again, when you're dealing with not only the build back, but then the personal property aspect of it. And then again, what I like most is really being the shoulder to cry on after they've lost everything. It's like, this is like, roll up the sleeves. Like, this is what we're here to do. This is why we exist.
You get that feeling of being the hero from losses like this, that the people
love
really
it.
need you. It's not
I
a
love
business to you anymore. You can feel like you're contributing to society in a way. It's a lot like tornado losses in that regard. Yeah. I've done plenty of fire losses, never all at once.
This is why I became adjusters.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
It
It's
definitely
wild.
is great.
No pun intended.
Yeah. All right,
Thanks,
guys,
Matt.
I'm going to let
Nice
you
chatting
go.
with
Appreciate your time. I'll see you guys next time. All right, real quick, before you guys get off, I need to talk about our sponsors. This is the very first episode we've had all year. We're about to go through a whole gambit of new episodes this year, but let's talk about Claim Titan. If you're a public adjuster and you need a CRM, Claim Titan is an excellent CRM run by Eric Davison, and they have so many different things built into that, and he's building new features into it all the time. It is solid. It's very easy to manipulate yourself and make it work for your firm already. Building Experts Institute is a company that I'm involved in. It's an online training platform for public adjusters, contractors, insurance adjusters, engineers, everybody that's in the industry to learn about damage profiles, dealing with engineers, Xactimate training, all kinds of stuff on a membership program for only $109 per month. You get access to everything for $109. It's freaking cheap. Brelly is another program that I'm involved with. Brelly is an AI platform for claims handling. If you need some help dealing with claims and you want to make a shortcut button, you can actually get help with AI to do everything. It'll even tell you what you should do next. It's amazing. It's amazing. And it's only getting better every single day. So if you're interested in that, reach out to me on that one. L2TB Consulting is my firm that does expert work and consulting. If you are interested in having help on an individual claim or having a report written, that QR code that's up there at the top of this screen is what you need to scan in order to book us for consultation or get us on the program to take a look at a file to write a report for you. Huggins Law Firm, if you are working in Florida or Georgia, is Remington Huggins, my co-host for this show, that wasn't able to make it today. Remington's firm is outstanding. If you are looking for a law firm that you can trust, then someone that will actually tell you straight without BSing you, that's Remington and his firm. The American Policyholder Association is something I've been a part of for a long time. I believe in their mission. They are uncovering insurance carrier fraud committed by insurance companies to policyholders. It happens all the time. But the only time they're ever looking for fraud is when the policyholder or a contractor or a public adjuster is committing it. This is the only organization that uncovers insurance carrier fraud. And they were a big push recently with the whistleblower actions that have come out where the carriers were editing estimates and photos and all this kind of stuff. They had a lot to do with that. CheckFlow Pro is a new company that helps companies with mortgage check processing. They actually handle it from beginning to end for you. I don't know of any other company that does that. You don't have to do anything. It's white glove service. They handle it for you. It's amazing. I can't say enough about the company because everyone that has used it has been extremely satisfied. That's CheckFlow Pro. Check them out. They're a new company. They're awesome. All right, guys, I appreciate your time. We will see you in a more regular pace, but we're going to have a few more episodes regarding these wildfires coming up in the next few days. So stay tuned. I'll see you next time.